2018 KTM 300 XCW TPI transfer port injection. The fuel injected two-stroke 300s are here in the United States this year for the first year. Some initial riding impressions first time out. This is the easiest dirt bike I've ever ridden in technical terrain. It's just so light and so nimble and so spot on the fueling. It's just I tell you, if you put a recluse clutch and a left hand rear brake lever on this thing, you'll have the ultimate OAP, old age pensioner motorcycle. And that's where they really did well with the market on this motorcycle. It's a competition enduro machine for AA riders, but for an average C rider like myself, 55 years old, only 5.5 feet tall, it's the easiest dirt bike in the world to ride. So they've really done well to capture the market with this machine. Now, the transfer port injection, some controversy about that, and rightfully so. The carbureted bike's got a reasonable argument saying you've taken a very simple machine and made it rather complicated. But as of right now, you still have a choice. You can buy either the carbureted version of this bike or the fuel injected version of this bike. But for me, hitting that button and having the fueling spot on every time just makes the operation of the machine so much easier than fiddling around with jets. Now, when I came up here to Packer Saddle, probably about 7,000 feet or so, and the manual says you need to reprogram the ECU for your new elevation when you transport your bike from a low elevation to a high elevation. Start it, stop it, start it, stop it. Right away, the first start, it stalled. Second start, it still stalled. And by the third start, it was running perfect. Perfect. Reprogram the ECU to the new elevation. Because remember, density altitude, the altitude that the engine performance is based on, because of the amount of molecules per set volume of air, is based on the pressure altitude, the temperature, and the relative humidity. All that's taken into account by the ECU and the fuel injection. So to me, that demonstrates the loss of performance that I would otherwise have lost on a carbureted bike unless I'd gone to all the trouble of perfectly jetting that carbureted bike for the exact altitude, temperature, and pressure that I'm riding at today. The ECU on the TPI takes care of all of that. Oil injection also, as far as simplicity for an operator point of view. Just pump fuel in here, injector oil goes in here, good for probably 8 tanks of fuel or so, with an idiot light to warn you when you're low on oil and you need to get more oil, or you can just see the oil level right here. The computer automatically controls the oil injection right there and injects it separate from the fuel directly into the reeds, or the induction, the intake system. The TPI, of course, comes into the side of the cylinders with the fuel. So that means you can run your oil mixture, or the computer runs the oil mixture, very, very lean, especially at idle throttle settings, resulting in a very clean mixture setting and adding to the spot-on fueling. And though this thing's got great top-end performance, where it really shines out here in the technical terrain is the buttery smooth low-end torque that this two-stroke engine provides. And here's another thing why this thing is like such a great old age pensioner bike, is it's so lightweight. At merely 225 pounds, you can pick the whole thing up off the trail with one hand. And it's perfectly balanced, 225 pounds. Plus they've done work on the crank balancing to make it a very smooth running two-stroke machine. Now everybody wants to hear these things go, so here you go. that's where you get your low end torque. Now, of course, you don't need all that high RPM performance out here on these technical trails. You want that bottom end torque. By the way, there's also a mapping switch, even though there's not a switch on the handlebars. There is a plug underneath the fuel tank. Disconnect that plug and you can go from the performance setting, the stock setting, to a milder setting. Perfect for us old guys. So I tried the mild setting with this plug apart and decided I enjoyed the crisper performance of the performance setting with the plug plugged in. The best thing to do is to get a mapping switch and mount it on the handlebar, which will allow you to switch back and forth without removing the tank, and comes stock on the 6 days version of this bike. Another point I want to make on the TPI is the transition from low range to mid range to high range is absolutely flawless because it's all done electronically now, whereas with a carburetor, of course, you're always having to try to approximate that with a series of jets and needles. Because fuel injection works great until it doesn't. At least with a carburetor, you can fiddle with it in the field and usually limp home. KTM's been working 10 years developing the TPI fuel injection for these two-strokes. I have a 2013 KTM EXCF 350, the 4-stroke, fuel-injected 4-stroke 350, nearly 10,000 miles, 0 issues with the fuel injection on that machine. Just change the fuel filter out. So I'm confident that they've got the fuel injection worked out on these TPI bikes. If not, you'll hear about it here. The KTM 300 XCW TPI 2018. Go get you one. No money down. Go see Jerry at Sierra Motorsports. See you here.